Namaskar and welcome to this exciting new episode of Sattology Debunking Mythology. Today we're doing a Puru Paksha again, and I have a great friend, philosopher, guide, Muni, Rishi, what do you call it? He has done excellent research on these topics. So without delay, let us welcome Shri Nilesh Nilkant Oak.
Namaskar, Aditya ji.
Namaskar. So, this series has been a hit so far in the Puru Paksha. So can Puru Paksha be considered same as due diligence? Because due diligence in the modern project management, you are a professional project management, and we use that again and again, due diligence. So
Yes,
can we consider the same thing?
it can be considered a same thing or at least a similar thing with some additional elements. For example, in the management speak, we may look at due diligence from a purely our point of view, from a purely selfish point of view. From say if I'm working for a certain company, I will see this as from my company's point of view. Here what the Puru Paksha is asking you to do, it is a due diligence, but it is saying before you go and find the holes, the part of the due diligence is to find the gaps. But before you find the gaps, almost give a benefit of doubt. Just imagine for a minute, again corporate speak, that you are an employee or you are a CEO of that company. Suppose you are doing due diligence about certain company, that you want to acquire potentially. So you as a CEO of that company, how would you represent that company, what it is good at, and how it is the leader in their space and so on. So do that first. That is a Puru Paksha. Okay, giving them a full benefit of doubt, and then start drilling holes into those arguments.
Right.
So that is a khandan, and then you have to reestablish your mandan, which is like a merger and acquisition report. Should we acquire that company? What is the benefit, and so on and so forth.
A great point, because and here we are doing Puru Paksha based on a work of a historian and author, Ved Vyas. So here the proper referencing of his work is also very much required, because some people misquote it or make it out of context, and then they arrive at a different result because you use the hypothesis incorrectly.
Correct. So yeah, if it's a Mahabharata, it's a Vyasa. If it's a Ramayana, it is Valmiki. And as you said, they may not refer to the original evidence. That is one possibility. The second possibility is they may refer to the evidence from, say, Mahabharata in case of Mahabharata dating, or they may refer to some evidence from Valmiki Ramayana in case of Ramayana dating. But they use the evidence selectively. And how do they do it usually? They will use that evidence which seems to or appears to, at least in their mind, match their own claim. And so such a selective thing should not be done. In fact, my point is, anytime you try to try to apply the scientific method, it's expected that you will come across evidence that will match your claim, and you will come across evidence that will not match your claim. The point is to recognize the both, and in a very transparent fashion, present it to the world, present it to the other folks to critique it. And still you may claim, suppose it's like a tennis match, like a best of 5, 6-0, 6-0, 6-0. Even then, if we take a very simplistic scenario, you can say the total shots that would have been fired could be up to, say, 108. I'm taking 36 shots for each set, so 6 game. So that's like a 4 times 6 is 36. And, what is that? 24. And then giving 2 points to the losing player. But even when the game is won 6-0, 6-0, 6-0, in principle, those points could be 72 to 36. And sometime I'll show you the math of it. I'm sure you can easily build that math, but for the benefit of our audience. My point is, you must list the evidence that does not corroborate your claim. And that is where you will see the problem, that people don't do that.
Great point. See, when Vyasdev was writing these points, and he's also showing different conversations of Bhishma with Yudhishthir, and also the historical happenings when Pandavas went to Hastinapur to call Dhritarashtra there and
Hmm.
greet him to come and visit
Hmm.
before the Stri Parva.
Hmm.
And so they did foresee to some extent that in Kali Yuga people may not understand it. So they
Hmm.
gave historical astronomical references because those references are unique,
Yes.
and they did, and but as a very casual conversation,
Correct.
because
Correct.
it was a well-known fact, because the audience to which they were speaking were highly learned. They would immediately understand that this is the coordinates he's giving, so this is the historical account now.
Correct. And they're given in a casual way so that someone vicious person would not remove them because he
Right.
or she doesn't even understand. So this is whatever it is, how does it matter? Let's leave them. And with that way, fortunately they have survived. Say case of Mahabharata more than 7,000 years, case of Ramayana more than 14,000 years for us to investigate. I mean, how fortunate are we? So
And it does increase our faith in the scholarship of these great discussions. So let's
correct.
get on with the show and discuss the Puru Paksha based on Ashok Bhatnagar's work.
Very good. So I'll start sharing the slide, and at the end of it, if we have a time, we can discuss more things. Thank
Yes.
you. Somebody else has done that mistake for us so that we don't have to do that mistake. All right. So do you want me to start sharing?
Yes, please.
Okay. So let me start sharing. All right. Here. Okay. So we will continue with this series, reviving the tradition of Poorvapaksh, and a very specific claim that we are going to look at. And I am already asserting that that particular claim is unscientific and illogical. Okay, so I am sort of jumping into Uttara Paksha, but for a reason, because many times I will discuss this claim and people are wondering, what do I think of that claim? So I'm making it very clear that the claim I'm discussing today, I'll talk about what can be learned from this, but it is unscientific. It is my assertion, which means there is evidence to back it up. It is unscientific and illogical. That claim is by one Dr. Ashok Bhatnagar. He is, I do not have a clear idea of his background, but I think his PhD is in astronomy, astrophysics, or a similar subject. And he has claimed that based on his analysis of the Mahabharata evidence, the date of the Mahabharata war ought to be 1793 BCE. So where does this fit into this big scheme of uh, references, big scheme of claims going from 400 CE to 7300 BCE? It falls somewhere right here. It is 1793 BCE, so falls into that bracket. Okay. Um, Again, now that we are becoming familiar with this four quadrant system, I'm not going to spend much time on it because you can always go back and watch the previous episode. Now he has a claim. So Dr. Ashok Bhatnagarji has a claim. So either he's going to fall into this bottom left-hand corner or top right-hand corner. And based on my analysis of his claim, which I will share today, I'm going to put him into this bottom corner, which is to say almost a priori agenda. Okay, it's not a detailed study of the Mahabharata evidence, notwithstanding what he claims. I mean, he claims he has done a very detailed study, and I'll go over his claims in a minute. So that's where he would fall, okay, here, particular place. And so what is the claim of Dr. Ashok Bhatnagar? And I will tell you which part I agree with him to and where he has gone wrong. He says Mahabharata text has astronomy references to seasons, solstices, planets, eclipses, and Indian calendar. I completely agree with him. Okay. In fact, it has many more references to tithis, for example, to the phases and positions of the moon, sometimes to the comets, which he would have said that they include in all of this. But in case he doesn't, then I'm saying there is a much more even than what he has said. Then he has done, at least in terms of the dating business, he has done his Poorvapaksh reasonably well. He said existing claims are from 5600 BCE through 400 BCE. Please keep that in mind, because here, as if he shows awareness for my claim. But you will see when he actually goes into the detailed analysis, he dare not discuss my claim. Okay, and of course for a reason. So existing claims, he admits 5600 BC through 400 BC, and that's also a reasonable statement. Okay, I mean there are some claims like 7300 BC or 400 CE, but that's very much we can say in this range. It's not exact numbers. Then he says, based on a few cyclic events and interpretation beyond what the text says, these Mahabharata researchers who have come up with those many multiple claims that fall between 5600 BC through 400 BCE are, according to Dr. Ashok Bhatnagar, are based on few cyclic events and the interpretation beyond what the text says. So what he's saying is these Mahabharata researchers have only used few cyclic events. He is partly correct, okay, because what he's claiming there, that first portion, does not apply to my claim. I have used every single astronomy evidence in the Mahabharata text. If it exists, it is been analyzed for my date. The second one, he says, interpretation beyond what the text says. Again, directionally, he is correct. That is true for majority of the Mahabharata researchers, except pay attention. He is guilty of the exactly same thing that he's claiming in this bullet, saying that that is what the other Mahabharata researchers are doing. Okay, but he's directionally correct. Then he says the popular claim, and he says claims, and he's right, because there are like 60, 70 different claims around 3000 BC. He says they contradict, all the claims around 3000 BC contradict the Mahabharata evidence. I 100% agree with him. In fact, I make a much stronger assertion. I say that there is not even a single piece of evidence in the entire Mahabharata text that can allow anyone to claim a date of Mahabharata anywhere around 3000 BC, but forget anywhere around 3000 BC plus minus 200 BC. Nobody can claim even a date 3000 BC plus minus 1000 BC. So a date from 2000 BC to 4000 BC cannot be claimed for the year of Mahabharata war. That is my assertion. So I'm agreeing with him. Now, he says this prompted him to undertake an in-depth analysis of the Mahabharata text and determine the Mahabharata date accurately. That is what he's claiming. We will look at his claim. Where does he begin? He says there are 52 verses from the 10 Parvas that he looks at. And then he claims that he separates those into consistent from the inconsistent. I'll tell you the very humorous definition that he has. If you read his paper, I'm going to show you the reference to his paper, that in his definition, the consistent from, how you separate consistent from inconsistent, if something matches 1793 BCE, at least in his subjective interpretation, then it is consistent. If something does not match for 1793 BCE, then it is inconsistent. That is not how science works. That is not how logic works. Then he mentions that sufficient evidence to determine the autumnal equinox and winter solstice, enough to determine the unique date for the Mahabharata war. What he's saying is, the Mahabharata text has sufficient evidence to determine the autumnal equinox and a winter solstice, and that is enough to determine the unique date for the Mahabharata war. I agree with him partially. Here is what I will say. Based on the Indian lunar calendar, lunisolar calendar information in Mahabharata text, based on the descriptions of winter solstice, based on the descriptions of seasons, phases, positions of the moon, the descriptions of the lunar months, and the duration of Bhishma Nirvana, you can definitely get to the approximate time interval, and which is what? From like a 5000 BC to 7000 BC, based on this. But that is, so his statement is correct, but the way he used that to arrive at 1793 is decisively false. Because if indeed you use the evidence from Mahabharata text, yes, you will not come to the exact date. You will come to the interval from 5000 BC to 7000 BC. That's not what he ended up. He actually ended up with much outside this interval. So his initial statement is correct about the autumnal equinox, winter solstice. His whichever way he used that data is decisively false, decisively wrong. And so the date that he arrived at is the Mahabharata war date began So the Mahabharata war began on 14 October 1793 BC. Just keep that in mind. He's not using a Julian calculation reference. He's using a Gregorian calculation difference, which means there could be a difference of 20, 30 days, depending on how far back that particular date is. All right. This is his paper, published not that long ago, Indian Journal of History of Science, published in 2017. And the title of the paper is Date of the Mahabharata War Based on Astronomical References, a Reassessment. So Aditya ji, in a way, he's doing a Puru Paksha. And of course, he's claiming that he's doing a Puru Paksha. And to an extent, he has done a good job. And then he's also claiming his own theory, which is very important, at least good that he does it. Okay. So far, so good. Now, very recently, this January of 2021, Sanjeev Sanyal, who is also a Indic researcher, has written a few popular books. He also is an advisor, financial advisor to Indian government. I'm not sure of his exact position. On Facebook, he wrote this, okay, related to the work of Dr. Ashok Bhatnagar. I want to read it to you, and I'll tell you the context of it. So why I'm quoting something from Sanjeev Sanyal? Because Sanjeev Sanyal is a reasonably well-known Indic activist, you can say, public intellectual, you may say, or Indic researcher. And what happens, just like Bhagavad Gita says, yad yad acharati sreshta, okay, common people, they look at certain people as important people, someone who has done something well, studied well, and they may take their word as an authoritative word, and people can quickly run into authority fallacy. And that's why I'm just pulling this statement. So on January 19, he wrote on Facebook, over the years, I have read many papers about the dating of Mahabharata using astronomy reckoning. Remember this, he's claiming he has read many papers. So far, I had not been entirely convinced by any of the estimates. That is fair. That is his subjective conviction. And I don't know if he has read my work. Anyways, here is the paper that I think does the best job, both in terms of transparency and scientific application. Keep these words in mind: transparency and scientific application. It suggests a date around 1793 BC for Kurukshetra war. Read and decide for yourself. In all fairness, what he's saying is that is his personal opinion. You shouldn't take it blindly. But he's sharing it with you, which is a great thing to do. And he's asking people to read and decide for themselves. Great. So when he did that, notice the term. He says it's transparent and it has a scientific application. Okay. I'm going to question these both points. And also he's claiming that he has read many papers related to the dating of Mahabharata using astronomy. Okay. Now, just because he read many does not have to include my research work. So that's fair. I have to be fair to him. So I wrote to him right on the Facebook, and I said, Sanjeev Sanyal ji, I presume you have not read my works. I'm glad you are impressed at the transparency and scientific application behind the claim of Dr. Bhatnagar. I said, would you be open to having a debate? So now he at least understands what Dr. Bhatnagar has written in the paper. So I asked him, would you be open to having a debate on 1793 BCE versus 5561 BCE? And I suggested a few places where we can do it. I have suggested other places, did not include Sattology here, just whatever I was writing that time. But Sattology, for example, Sangam Talk, Jaipur Dialogues, many other platforms. Even he can just come, he and me can talk. And I said, if Dr. Ashok Bhatnagar can join, that's even better. I said, it will be educational. Now, that's what the point I want to mention. The reason we are doing this Puru Paksha, if the object is not just to say somebody's wrong and I am right or something, although if that's every individual researcher would try to do that, and that's perfectly fine. Through the process, it is important for the individuals to get into this tapasya. They cannot just keep on watching this game passively. They have to get to the reading of Mahabharata texts. They have to understand, get to study astronomy or archaeology or any other sciences and figure it out for themselves. Otherwise, they will always be like at the mercy of who says what. So it will be educational for all and will be a step forward in determining the correct dating of the Mahabharata and thus Indian civilization. Then I said, for the record, I assert 5561 is the best claim among all existing claims. This is a very tall claim, I say. Based on the rigorous criteria of scientific method, scientific acumen, logical reasoning, Vyapti Jnana, and multidisciplinary, empirical, objectively testable evidence. What does he respond? I'll show you in the next page. But then I put it on the Twitter and I said, why every Indian, Hindu, whatever you want to call it, every Mahabharata enthusiast should take to self-study. Our history is too crucial to be left to the opinions of the experts. Okay, read Mahabharata, read Ramayana, study Darshana, science, logic, go for it. So when I put it on the Twitter, Sanjeevji responded. He said, debate it with him. By him, he means Dr. Ashok Bhatnagar. And he said, I don't have a particular view, meaning he doesn't have a particular view or axe to grind. Well, I partly disagree, because by claiming that claim of Dr. Ashok Bhatnagar is the best, he has an axe to grind. Okay. And that's perfectly fine. In fact, it's very much welcome. He said, I'm generally skeptical of this approach. Fine. He can be skeptical of anything he likes in a subjective way. And we'll use it only as additional corroborative information if it fits the archaeology. So he's biased towards archaeology and other evidence. Again, his choice. We can't do much about it. I responded, I said, you may be skeptical of the approach, and I'm not sure what approach you have in mind. However, apparently you did think that 1793 BC is the best claim among what you have evaluated. What other claims besides 1793 BC that you evaluated? And there was no answer. Now, I'm not being very critical of Sanjeev Sanyalji in specifically. This just happens to be very specific. But this is my very typical experience dealing with researchers in general, and specifically with Indic researchers. You get into a certain discussion, and after that, and I will leave it to the audience to decide why they suddenly stop, because you can see this was a very, what you can say, genuine conversation going on, and suddenly they will stop. And my response to that is, my assertion is that when they don't have a response and they are caught, on a certain point, they will stop responding. So it's not specific to Sanjeevji. It is, I have seen this time and again. Okay. It's a very recurring phenomenon. So what I did is, that conversation came to a stop. I just quickly made a note, said I have asserted, backed by evidence, empirically, objectively testable, that while I started with astronomy, there are 12 plus disciplines of science from which, if the evidence exists and if can be correlated to Mahabharata text, then it points to 5561 BC and no else. Okay, but let's get back to Dr. Ashok Bhatnagarji. Now, the reason I took this digression with the Sanjeev Sanyalji's comment was for this reason, that never get into the authority fallacy. Like some important person, he or she may be expert in some other area, but when they get into some area where they have no expertise, but you may still think, oh, because I like this person somewhere else, this person, whatever he or she is saying here must make sense. Not always the case. That applies to Sanjeev Sanyalji, that applies to me, that applies to any name that you might know in the research field. But let's get back to assumptions of Dr. Ashok Bhatnagarji. He also repeats, now he doesn't say that is his claim, but it's not very clear as to whether he agrees or not. In a very subtle way, he says, first there was a Jaya, then Bharat, then Mahabharat. My quick comment is, this is an absolutely decisively false statement. Now, again, Bhatnagarji is not claiming as his. He's saying many Mahabharata researchers assume that. I'm saying it's already been falsified. I have shown with the Mahabharata evidence. It's on my blogs. It is possibly on my YouTube. But if not, Adityaji, you and me will do another session on this.
In my new book also, Yudhishthir, I debunked that also.
You have also done that. Thank you. Correct. It's very clearly there in the Adi Parva, right?
Yes.
It's very clear. So already falsified, but I'll tell you, it is repeated ad nauseum. Let's move on. That's not the main point.
Another thing I'll just add there.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
People say that Mahabharata has only 8,800 shloka. That is again fake thing. Because Vyasdev clearly says 8,800 shlokas are those which either I understand or Shukdev Goswami understands, my son Shukdev Goswami understands, and Sanjay may or may not
understand. Yes. But I don't know who else understands, right?
Correct.
And those are the Guda Shloka.
Guda Shloka.
Grantham Granthi Tadachakre Munir Gudham Kutuhala.
Correct. Exactly.
Those are the ones. Yes. Okay. And we will see those coming there. But see why people just say these kind of things. This is not again limited to Dr. Bhatnagarji. This is a recurring theme of many Mahabharata researchers. In their assumptions, they will they will state some assumptions which becomes a justification for their running away from certain evidence. I'm going to show you that.
And then, actually, you so rightly you put it over there. Narayanam namaskritya naram cheva narotaram devim saraswatim vyasam tado jayam udirayet.
Correct.
Means that all the itihas which Vyasadeva has written by the mercy of Saraswati, all considered Jaya.
Yeah.
So it's not that Mahabharat was Jai, then it became Bharat. No, even
Correct.
Ramayana is considered Jai. Because
Yes.
same shloka is in beginning of Mahabharata, Ramayana also.
Right. And that is this twisted interpretations, by the way, like taking this Jaya meaning something like this.
Yeah.
But let's just moving on. So astronomy evidence, he says that SB Dikshit had claimed 65. Fine. I mean, I have not counted. So let's take his word as the correct one. Then some other person has counted 150 plus, and that Dr. Bhatnagar seems to agree. I will tell you that I have found 300 plus. But let's not argue about 65, 150 versus 300, because sometimes people may take 3-4 verses, they may consider it one. But that 3-4 verses could have like 5 different astronomy observations. So it could be the gauge RNR issue, like how do you count one? So that's possible. So again, as long as everyone is taking all the evidence, I don't care whether they call it 65, 150, 300 or whatnot, but they should exhaustively list it. And many people do not list the evidence for a reason. Okay, now he's saying what kind of astronomy evidence is there? He says calendric, solstices, eclipses, planetary positions, and so on, comets, meteors. Good. So he has done a good job here. Okay, now I want to highlight one comment there. Look, when it comes to planetary positions, he's saying with reference to nakshatras for astrological purpose. And he has not defined astrological purpose here. We are going to revisit, and you will see Dr. Ashok Bhatnagar cannot corroborate even a single planetary observation out of 35 plus from the Mahabharata text for 1793 BCE. And so likes of Dr. Konrad Elstar willing to give him a free check, saying, yeah, this one, it has to be the 1793 or 1478. Okay. Not even a single planetary observation from 35 plus he can match, he can corroborate for 1793 BC. So he's creating his way to run away. There he's saying, therefore, astrological purpose. Well, who said that? Mahabharata, everything is given with a purpose, with a purpose. What astrology purpose? Explain what the astrology purpose is. There is no explanation. Okay, so now he's doing a quick Puru Paksha in terms of references. So look at the dates, like he's talking 1500 BC, 800 BC, 1478 BC of Professor Iyengar, or 3067 BC of Professor Achar, which is originally from Professor K. Srinivas Raghavan, 1969. Achar is simply just borrowing that date, okay? So he refers to all of this. Now remember, at the beginning in his paper, and I'll show you the paper title, but in the beginning, I did show the paper title. The beginning, he has said that the claims go from 5600 BCE to 400 BCE, but he's not discussing all of them. So I'm just asking, where is that 5561 BC discussion? Originally, he mentions it, he never discusses it, and I'm telling you the reason. As soon as he would have discussed it, my claim, and therefore, if he discusses my date, then he has to discuss the evidence that I've shown. And 1793 is out. Okay, 1793 BC is out before even you can repeat 1793 BC. That is how powerful the evidence is for 5561 BC. Okay, now something he quotes, very interesting. Not many Mahabharata researchers quote. So I give him a credit. Panchashatam Chakchakuru Pravira Shesham Dinanam Tava Jivitasya. But even here he makes some mistakes. Okay. So for example, he says, according to this above, if we count 56 days instead of 50, well, there also he's wrong, but I'll not go into the details. Then we get 98 days. And actually he's correct, but correct only for a brief second, because you know what you get 98 days for? You get 98 days for the net duration of Bhishma on the bed of arrows from the 10th day of the war to the day of winter solstice. But that's not what he's saying. He's saying that is the duration from a Balram Tirtha Yatra, and therefore he is throwing away that Balram Tirtha Yatra reference because he cannot explain it either. I cannot explain Balram Tirtha Yatra also. We will discuss that some other time, okay? And how the people who are just taking only Balaram Tirtha Yatra, it's like in a tennis pick, all they did in the whole game is they had a one ace, okay? Like a full good point. They are only showing the video of that and claiming that therefore they won the match. That is the metaphor, Adityaji, okay? Just they're showing that one particular shot that they could get. And even I will tell you how that shot is also a foul, okay? But that will take some time. So even here he is wrong because it's not about the Balarama duration. and therefore he rejects Balarama anyways because he cannot justify it. So he tries something. I'm giving him a credit for quoting something that other Mahabharata researchers dare not quote it. That 56 days remaining for Bhishma when Yudhishthir and Krishna meet him on the Kurukshetra after some 40 days, okay? Because that takes you to that 98 days. Now, what does he do? He may discuss all these things. It's a 30 pages long paper, research paper. I would encourage everyone to read it multiple times. But when everything else fails, he comes back to these two references. Okay. So on this side, Magoyam Samano Prapto Masa Punyo Yudhishthira, Masa Somyo Yudhishthira there. Tribhaga Shesha Pakshoyam Shuklo Bhavitum Arhasi. And on this side, he's coming with Ashta Panchashatam Ratram Shaina Syadya Megata, those 58 nights that he's referring to. Fine. What is the so these two references are correct. They are in the Mahabharata. What is the problem? These two references are only two references out of 6 references, 23, 60 plus 100 plus references related to Bhishma Nirvana. Why only select 2? Okay, this is the problem that we discussed last time when we did the Poorvapaksh of the Nilakanta Chaturdhara of 17th century. And what is the problem? That he assumed, based on one reference, which I just showed you on the previous page just now, that the duration of Bhishma on the bed of arrows from the 10th day of the war to the winter solstice was only 58 days. And from there, only the journey was downhill. My point is, Nilakanta Chaturdhar was one of the first in a long time who was creating that critical edition of his time. So he might have made a mistake, but what is the problem of these new Mahabharata researchers? Why can't they look at the entire evidence, which I have shown many times? I'm going to show it to you today. This is not correct. This is extremely careless and casual. This simply shows somebody has not bothered to read the Mahabharata text. The failure is explained, justified by all kinds of manipulations. And the problem is because they do not bother to read the Mahabharata text in a sequential fashion and put together the dots. And even now, as I said, the Mahabharata researchers refuse to read it. I don't understand. This is the page I showed you last time from Dr. Konrad Elst's article that he wrote in Pragyata. And look at his language, and I'm glad because I prefer when people are so crisp and clear as to what they're trying to say. And he's very crisp and clear. And I admire Konrad Elst for that. Although I consider his claim here and justification as a disaster par excellence. He's saying at the end, he says, we leave it to others to argue whether it's a 1478 or 1728. He actually means 1793, not 28. But we do stick to his saying this non-negotiable conclusion. And what is that non-negotiable conclusion? That the Mahabharata war happened only sometime during the 2nd millennium BC. That is to say from 1000 BC to 2000 BC. Last time we discussed that, how that is absolutely, decisively false. But let's move on. So Dr. Konrad Elst, this claim defending this 2nd millennium BC is unsustainable. And honestly, in scientific discussion, you don't defend, you corroborate, you falsify, you show what goes towards your claim, you explain what goes against your claim. You do not defend things in a rhetorical and a polemic fashion. Unfortunately, it appears that the training of Dr. Konrad Elst, and he has done some wonderful work. He's a very lucid writer. I mean, I read his books and I enjoy them. But his training appears to be from that humanities perspective, where I mean, anyone can learn anything. But I have not seen this spark or even some evidence of the scientific acumen or logical reasoning. Okay, and also understanding the evidence, where when caught, he will just evade the point and go on to some digression. Okay, that is what something I notice with my interactions with him. To be fair to him, interestingly, occasionally, and I have yet to understand this, sometime when I'm presenting, and in a very admirable fashion, he will come to me and congratulate me and says, Nilesh, this is wonderful evidence. I did not know such evidence existed. So he's also a very open-minded person. Anyways, we are talking Dr. Ashok Bhatnagar's specific claim 1793, and I have discussed this many times, so I'll not spend time. The Mahabharata evidence, 6+, you can start with only 6 points. You can actually start with only 3 points. This Shanti 1.1, 1.12, Shanti 51:14, these are the references from Mahabharata, and Anushasan 153:56. These three references are sufficient to show that Bhishma was on the bed of arrows for more than 92 days. And therefore, if you understand astronomy, it has to be between 5000 BC and 7000 BC. But if somebody is not convinced, I don't know why they would not convince. They should not waste time arguing unnecessarily. They should get to the study of astronomy and Mahabharata. But there are 6 references. There are 23 plus references. There are 60 plus references. There are 100 plus references. Every time they show they cannot understand, more evidence is there in the Mahabharata to convince them that Mahabharata has to be between 5000 and 7000 BC. That is the answer. So there are 2 references. If you only selectively go to them, it will take you to that 1793, and the calculation has no problem, which I said in the last episode when we discussed Konrad Elst. Okay. Now quickly the last one. Now Aditya ji, now he's discussing the planetary evidence. Remember, he had said it only had astrological purpose, and I'm going to explain why he wanted to create that ready-made defense. Him meaning Dr. Ashok Bhatnagar. So now he writes long essays there. Okay, I'm just taking 2 pages from this. Somebody does this, Iyengar showed this, and so on and so forth. But bottom line is, if you read the long write-up on the planets, it might remind you. So let me ask you this question, Aditya ji. Think of your school days, and many of our viewers, they can relate to their exams, especially not the option. Even if in an option exam, like what do you do? If you don't know the answer, A, B, C, D, E, you just decide today, if I don't know the answer, I am going to answer it as A or B or C, and you just stick to that number. Similarly, if you have to write a long written answer, but the question is something that you have no clue what the question is, and that is to say you don't know the answer, what do you do? Aditya ji, can I ask you the question? What have you done? And then I'll share what I have done.
Yeah,
And then many people do the same.
you put me in a spot, but I will try to fill the page.
There you, thank you very much. And this was not a prepared, and I didn't want to show you this question before. What do you do if there is a question on the exam for which you have no answer? You keep that question maybe at the last, do everything else, and just keep on writing, right? Fill the page or pages, hoping that whatever the answer that the professor is looking for is somewhere there. Or maybe he gets tired or she gets tired and gives some marks, and hopefully, it helps us. That is exactly what he has done. Exactly what Dr. Ashok Bhatnagar has done in his paper. Paper is out there in the public domain, so you don't have to take, and nobody has to take my word for it. You can actually go and look at it. Same page. Now, this is a good table, but it is not a complete table. He has shown the Mahabharata evidence and summarized it. This is not complete. For example, the first one is the planets, the grahas. And then when it comes to the second last column, he says location indicator in the Mahabharata. This list is correct, but it's not complete. It's a partial list. And of course, what he's saying is that it does not agree for his 1793. So he says, well, it's for some astrology purposes. It's not astronomy. There is no basis for that. If there is a basis, he has not described it. Why he thinks they are astrological and not astronomical. But if I'm arguing, if I'm claiming that he is wrong, the responsibility is on me to show that they are right. Okay. And so we don't have a time, so I'm going to take like a 3-4 minutes and just show you how that happens. You mentioned, Aditya ji, that how it is those mystic verses, 8,800 are very mystic verses that not everyone understands. Only Shuka understands and Sanjaya may understand, but many others don't understand. Well, when Vyasa wrote this, he is very clearly saying it in the Mahabharata. Grantham Granthi Tada Chakre Munir Gudam Kutualat. It is full of curiosities, full of mysteries. That Granthi, there are twists in it. If you just try to interpret that in a very straightforward way, always, it will not yield the answer. It is a puzzle. And he has done it deliberately, So, for example, if I give you this,
I'll just add over there to keep
please.
Ganesh busy. Because
keep Ganesh busy, exactly, and I'm going to show you that verse, by the way. So imagine we are using different segments and we create 7 squares. And the question is, can you remove 3 out of these, only 3, reapply in a meaningful fashion and convert them from 7 to 5? Just to not take a time, I will show you the answer. But if you give this puzzle, some people who love puzzles, they will spend some time in 5-10 minutes and they will solve it. Others will spend hours and they say this is impossible. That is the this is impossible and therefore some other explanation is required is the argument of 99.99% of Mahabharata researchers, because they don't know how to solve the puzzle. Actually, the answer is simple in this case, and that is also true for the Mahabharata planetary evidence. So what do you do? I'm just going to give you the answer, guys, okay? Because it's not interactive with rest of the audience. So if you remove these three, so remember, I removed these three, but the condition is I have to reapply meaningfully. So now if I remove this, so one is gone from here, one is gone from here, and one is gone from here. But what I'm going to do is take those three and now reapply at the top right-hand corner, 1, 2, and 3 like this. I meaningfully reapplied. There is no one idle segment hanging around somewhere. And I converted 7 squares into 5 squares of exactly same size. This is, we know that in the puzzles, we do this all the time. It's very important to understand that the Mahabharata astronomy evidence, Mahabharata planetary evidence, and every evidence is puzzle like this. That is that Aditya ji, that verse that I'm quoting, Grantham Granthi Tada Chakre Munir Gudam Kutuhalat, it comes immediately after the discussion that you refer to keep Ganesha, Bhagwan Ganesh busy. And then they said, so Ganesha is writing, Vyasadev is narrating, and that's how the whole Mahabharata was complete. And how was it? Like, what was the nature of the Mahabharata Grantha? It says, Grantham Granthi Tada Chakre Munir Gudam Kutula. It's full of curiosities, full of twists, full of puzzles, and so on. Gudam. Okay.
See, I will also add here, because like you correctly mentioned, many people read Mahabharata from English translations of other people, do not read the original Sanskrit translations. Very beginning itself, after this shloka, he mentions that the entire Mahabharata is written completely in 3 years. There's nothing added afterwards.
Yes.
Which is many people, they say, okay, Ramayana also, they say Uttara Ramayana was written, added later on.
But it's important thing is they only make that argument when the evidence from those portions do not match theirs. Okay, when it causes problem for their assumption or their dating, that's when they invoke the idea of a interpolation. And I'm saying, you are saying there is no interpolation. I would say there might be interpolation. I'm not saying there is, I'm saying there might be. But the point is, how do you identify interpolation? You see, if you are solving a jigsaw puzzle and, let's say it's a map of the whole world. Okay. And so we put all the pieces. And everything is complete, like what we know, and still there are 3 pieces left. We might say, these could be extra pieces. They are really not required. Like sometime in the corporate world, when we used to play games, we would deliberately do that to see what people do with it. So then we might say those are extra pieces. But just at looking at all the dismantled pieces before even solving the jigsaw puzzle, we cannot say, well, you know what, all of these pieces are not required. That's a very foolish argument. Okay. Now I want to just quickly highlight, and then that's my last slide, how powerful and how interesting is the planetary evidence. For example, Earth at the center, because we are watching from the Earth, what you are seeing, these numbers 1 through 28 are the 27 nakshatra, 27 stars. Like a zodiac in the Indian calendar system, the ecliptic is divided into 27 parts. Okay, because that's what the moon takes to make one complete circle. Now, this Saturn is given around the 8 and 9. So 1 is a Mrugashirsha, 7, 8 are Uttara Phalguni, Purva Phalguni, 15 is Mula Nakshatra, and 22, 23 is a Purva and Uttara Bhadrapadas. Okay. So Saturn is given as what? Bhagam Nakshatra Makramya Surya Putrena Pidate. That is that Phalguni. The Saturn is attacking the Phalgunis. Then Mars is shown around the 6, which is Magha Swangarako Vakra. Mag is doing Vakra near Magha. And then it says Shravanaicha Bruhaspati. Nakshatra number 18 is a Shravan. Around the Shravan, Bruhaspati is doing the same thing, whatever that Vakra thing is. Then it says that same Vakra thing is been done by Mars again near Anuradha Jeshta. Krutva Changarako Vakra Jeshtaya Madhusudana. Anuradha Prarthayate Maitram Samshayamanniva. Then again that same Mars is doing something to Chitra. Nunam Mad Bhayam Krishna Kuruna Samupastitam Visheshena Hi Varshneya Chitra Pediyate Graha. how accurate and how precise these are. Then, and I will tell you where these all take you. If you look at another reference from again the third adhyaya of Bhishma Parva, Samvatsara Sthainancho Graha Prajulito Ubho Vishakhayo Samipasto Brahaspati Shanescharo. In the vicinity of Nakshatra Vishakha, which is number 12, the Saturn and Brahaspati are standing for a year while shining brightly. That is their retrograde motion. Then moon and sun are explained doing something to Rohini, number 28. Saturn is explained as doing something to number 28. Prajapatyam cha nakshatra graha tikshna mahadyuti shaneshchara pidayati pidayan pranikodikam. On the 17th day of the war, when Karna falls, the Jupiter is also doing the same thing, afflicting nakshatra Rohini. And do you know how it is afflicting nakshatra Rohini? Exactly the same way sun and moon together were afflicting nakshatra Rohini on the first day of the war. So you can exactly show and repeat these three scenarios with respect to nakshatra Rohini. Only year you can do that is 5561 BC. In fact, all that I have so far shared, those you can match with Vishakha, those you can match with Jeshta Anuradha, with a Magha, with a Purva Falguni, Uttara Falguni, with a Shravan, with the Mars Chitra, only for 5561 BC. We are
And
not
Agastya
done.
also. And Agastya also.
Agastya, but that is for Ramayana times.
Ramayana times.
Right. Okay. But see, there is a what do you call Mercury? Okay. I'll just skip through that. Then Mars, such a beautiful description of a retrograde motion between 10 and 11. So 10 and 11 is a Chitra and Swati. Now, just for fun, listen to it, Adityaji. It says, Dhruvam prajwalitam ghoram apasavya pravartate Chitra swatyantare chaiva dishtitah parushagraha. Mars has settled, it's revolving in a backward direction, apasavya, in a non-normal direction, while shining brightly, scary brightly. When does that happen? In retrograde. And where is it doing it? Chitra Swatyantare Chaiva Dishtita Parushagra, between number 10 and 11, Chitra and Swati Nakshatra. Then it says Vakran Vakram Krutvam Cha Shravane Pavaka Prabha. After doing this all Vakri and Vakri, it came to Shravana in year 18. But I'm showing you near 19 for a reason. That 19 is the Brahma Rashi or Abhijit. He says, Vakran Okram Krutam Cha Shravane Pavaka Prabha. And on the first day of the Mahabharata war, 16 October 5561 BC, Brahma Rashi Samavrutta Lohitango Vyavastita. Lohitango means Mars. It came right along Brahma Rashi, and you do the right ascension measurements, the longitude measurements for Mars and for Brahma Rashi, which is Abhijit, on the 16 October, right there. That is right between the Dhanishta and Shravan. Okay, we are not done. I'll just give you one more and just quickly splash, everything on the screen. Venus has got 4 or 5 observations, totally 35 plus. Venus, such a beautiful observation of the Mahabharata. Do you know what it says? It says Shukram Proshta. Venus means Shukra. Shukram Proshtapade Purve Samaruya Vishampate. It came to Proshta Puropada, that is Purva Bhadrapada. Samaruya Vishampate Uttaretu Parikramya Sahita Pratyudikshite. Uttaretu Parikramya. Many of our audience, people in the audience would know parikrama, doing a parikrama in the mandir, okay, going around. It turned northward, made a parikrama around the Purva Bhadrapada, and then it went ahead. You can show that for 5561 BCE, okay? And there are on and on. There are many conjunctions, okay, of a Mars and a Shukra, Mars and a Venus, Mercury and Venus. And then on the last day, even surprising, that really surprised me. Oh, the only thing that is described, the Yudhishthir and Shalya are fighting, and that is compared with Saturn and Moon fighting. I said, why Saturn and Moon? Mostly it's a planetary conjunctions people talk about. Guess what? On the 18th day of the war, that is 2nd November 5561 BCE, the only 2 movable bodies in the sky through the whole night is basically Saturn and Moon, and they are right in the middle of the sky. The only 2 things. It is that precise, and there are many other conjunctions, positions of the sun and so on. So my point is, when you cannot just totally ignore this evidence or just dismiss it or explain it away by calling it astrological without even bothering to explain what is astrological. It is purely astronomical evidence, and when objectively tested, it leads to only 1 year. For a minute, Aditya ji, I'm telling you, and not that we should reject anything, we shouldn't. We insist we include. If you put aside Arundhati Vasishta for a minute, if you put aside the Bhishma Nirvana for a minute, and there is no reason why we should put it aside, my point is, even if somebody begins with only planetary evidence of the Mahabharata text, 35 plus strong, it will take to only 1 year, 5561 BC. And that's my last slide, by the way. So if you are inside India, definitely get hold. If this excites you, what I've just shared with you, and I am sharing with you, get your hands on these books. These books are technical research papers, you can say. So they are not to be read only once. You have to read these multiple times. But I assure you, every time you are going to get new insights that you would love. It will give you those aha moments. Okay, you will forget some of your other modes of entertainment. These are that fascinating once you get inside them. This can be ordered online if you are in India from Subbu Publications. They will deliver it to you, postage paid, to your address, as long as it is in India. But if you are outside India, not a problem. You can go to Amazon.com or specific Amazon site for your country, your region, and you should able to order each of these. So just do note down the covers, because the covers are not exactly same as they are seen in India from Subbu Publications. And the name of the historic Rama book is different. The book is identical, whether we call it 12,209 in India or the historic Ram outside India through Amazon. The content is identical. So with that, Aditya ji, I'm done for today. Sorry, it took longer.
No, but beautiful, and I'm really fascinated by your quoting the Mahabharata shloka, because that is something which is makes it very authoritative, because you know the exact references which is being quoted there, and I
Right.
think that's scholarship. I think that's a good Poorvapaksh also.
Right. And when we get to Uttar Paksha, Aditya ji, actually what we will do, this may take a long time. We will take that planetary evidence, and one by one we will show how it matches what the Vyasadeva was seeing in the sky, what people were seeing in the sky on each particular day of the 18 days of the war, from 16 October to 2nd November.
And continuing on the same discussion, when these people from these people, I'm saying the people who do not use the references of Vyasadeva, and even go to an extent of claiming that there were many Vyasadevs.
Yeah.
And to debunk, so if they cannot prove based on the Mahabharata Shastra, they say let the author be wrong.
Correct.
So the thing is that Vyasadeva, we all know that for the people of Kali Yuga, Vyasadeva put it in writing. It didn't mean that Vedas did not exist before Vyasadeva.
Correct.
Vedas were always there. Like we quoted in the Ramayana episode, we quoted that Atharva Veda mantra was used by Rishi Shringa to perform the marriage of, to perform the son giving ceremony for Maharaj Dashrath.
Correct.
So people who claim that the Atharva Veda did not exist, it is the same people who debunk that Vyasadeva also did not exist, or Vyasadeva was some other
multiple Vyasadeva.
Multiple Vyasadeva.
And there were multiple Vyasas is correct, but that is not to be confused with the multiple Vyasas of the Mahabharata.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the purpose is also mentioned there. Vyasadeva himself says, and Narad Muni confirms, that Shiva and Shivji and Brahmaji went to Vishnu to send forth his incarnation to write these scriptures, because they're so big, humans cannot write it. And or may not write it, or may not understand while writing it, because it's not that something for blind scholarship or selling Mahabharata book that Vyasadeva is looking for your endorsement. Vyasadeva is writing for preserving a narrative which human beings can use to come out of the cycle of karma bandhan.
Yes, out of compassion for all of us.
Correct. Like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Jivera Kripaya Kela Krishna Veda Puran.
Yes.
It's for Kripa ke liye. It's not for to prove that he has to sell books on Amazon or these things.
Exactly. Like Krishna. See, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is referring to Krishna producing it, but even Vyasadeva is also so one with Krishna. He's also Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, right?
Yeah. And in the beginning itself, he says that I'm writing this Mahabharata to glorify Purna Purushottam Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Correct.
Beginning he
Correct.
says it.
Yes.
So the purpose is to take people out of the cycle of birth, old age, disease, and death.
Correct.
Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi Dukh Doshanu Darshanam. And so if you understand the purpose, like Krishna says, the purpose of a small well can also be served by an ocean.
Hmm.
Samudra Utpane. So,
Correct.
so the purpose, if you understand the purpose, then we'll start, creating a fake stories also, or rejecting these people altogether.
Correct. Correct.
So great presentation, and I was really impressed by the way you quoted each the shloka. And for viewers who watch this show on YouTube, do comment there. And also, it is also inspiration for you to also remember. Not just Nilesh ji can remember. This is a text available for the entire humanity.
Correct. Correct.
And use Sanskrit to establish evidences. Don't use English to establish Sanskrit evidences, because Sanskrit
Yeah.
is an oral language.
On that, I will quickly add one thing, if I may. See, many people have translated that in English. Okay. And I would say, to be fair, most of the translation they do reasonably well of the Mahabharata. But what I have found, because I'm specifically researching in this area, when it comes to very crucial references, not just astronomy, but astronomy and many other that can be empirically verified, these Mahabharata translators absolutely go downhill and totally destroy the original meaning of what that reference is. In very generally, they do a decent job. So I mean, I should give them a credit. But when it comes to crucial references, they don't. So I'm just repeating your point, which is to say, people should develop the expertise to go back to Sanskrit also to an extent.
Right. Yes. So thank you, viewers, for watching it, and thank you, Nilesh, for this one of the best videos that we ever recorded. And all the videos are equally important, but this is one of the best. I think it should go in the annals of Sattology history of referenceable video.
Okay. All right.
Namaskar.
Thank you so much.
Namaskar, and thank you.
Namaskar.